To order on development and operations services. So today we acknowledge that this event is taking place on the traditional territory of the Indigenous peoples of Turtle Island. We are thankful to share in the special spirit of this place, rich in the energy of Mother Earth, our ancestors, and the love of all creation. I'm just going to preface the adoption of the agenda just as a reminder of the rules of engagement. Those who speaking must have the permission of the chair to speak. Our booked deputations, which we have one, have 10 minutes to speak, and we will give a 1-minute warning so that they know when their 10 minutes is up. Those wishing to speak to specific agenda items will have the opportunity to speak for 5 minutes. We will give you a 30-second warning for that. And so I think with keeping all of those procedures in place, we can have a very effective meeting and hear from as many people as possible. So the adoption of the agenda, I would ask that the content of the Development and Operations Services Standing Committee agenda for March 18, 2019 be adopted as presented. A mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Doherty, Deputy Mayor Hull. Any comments on the agenda? I would simply comment that we did contemplate moving up an agenda item, which I think there's a lot of people in attendance for. But in respect to the people who are already booked ahead, we do have people here to speak to those. So I'm going to stick with the order in which the agenda is presented. So with that, all those in favor of the agenda? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. Any business arising from the previous meeting? Seeing none. Alrighty, we are up to deputations. 5.1, the new brew pub plans for 40 Simcoe Street. And we look forward to hearing from Bryn Davies, Scott Brown, and Peter Brawl from Black Bellows Brewing Company. Please come forward.
Hi there.
Hi.
So Peter won't be joining us today. He's actually at BC at the moment doing a brew.
Okay.
Not for us, for someone else. So my name's Scott Brown. This is my business partner, Bryn Davies. And we are the partners at Black Bellows Brewing Company. Some of you may have heard of us before. So we're really excited to be able to share with the committee and the public what we've got going on down the street there. And a lot of you will have seen the windows boarded up and some work trucks and wondered what exactly is going on. So we'll try and shed some light on that today. So if we could, I guess I got the clicker here, don't I? So as many great Canadian business ideas were formed, this one came to fruition over a canoe trip 4 years ago. And myself and Peter was the other partner at that time. We had a shared love of craft beer, and Peter had been doing home brewing experiments in his Montreal apartment for about 10 years. And I've been involved with some other business ventures, so we thought let's combine our forces and open a craft brewery. And the problem was we didn't have any money. So we decided, well, yeah, I'll go here. So I was living in Collingwood at the time, Peter was in Montreal, and we were very intrigued by the Dave's Body Shop, as a lot of people are. You see it as an architectural gem, something of one of the few remaining pieces of our industrial heritage downtown, and it always struck us as the perfect place to have a brew pub. So we had actually approached the owners of the building at that time in 2014, but the timing of things just didn't work out. So we decided to start our brewery anyways as a contract brewery, which is where you don't have a physical home, but you rent space at other breweries, and then you have your beer produced and you market it and sell it yourselves. So we proceeded with that model. But we were inspired by the Days space. For those who don't know the history, it's been in the Days family since the 1860s, by all accounts. And it started out as a blacksmith shop, carriage maker, and as the years went by and horses were replaced by cars, it became an auto body shop. So we were really wanted to capture something of the history of the building, and we zeroed in on the bellows, the accordion-like thing that blows blows air onto the fire in the forges. And so this was some of our ideation process as we were coming up with the brand. So even though we weren't going forward with Days at that time, we were still very influenced by the space. So this is Peter and I on our very first brew, loading a whole bunch of grain that we picked up in Fergus into the back of an old Ford van. And we precariously drove that back to Collingwood. And this is our very first brew. here at the Collingwood Brewery. And that's where we've done a lot of our contract brewing over the years, out in Sir Sanford Fleming Drive there. So that's Pete hauling some grain up to the mash tun. So this is our product. This is what we've been selling primarily in the LCBO and local bars and restaurants, as well as spots around Toronto, for the last 3 years. And that's our mainstay. It's our white ale. And we've been producing that on a contract basis, and we've been able to develop the brand, develop fans of ours. And at this point, we were in the stages of planning to find our new home. And the Days property was on our radar. And around the same time that we, we're envisioning where we could land for our home, along came Mr. Davies here, who had just purchased the Days building. And Bryn also happens to be a brewer. So we thought, oh, there's a lot of common ground here, we should talk. And after quite a bit of negotiation, we ended up deciding that we should partner. And so we have. So the Days story has come full circle for us, and we are planning to open our brew pub there. So a little bit about our mission as a brewery. I'll just read this off for you. Like the blacksmiths of the past and the makers and creators of today, we infuse the spirit of restless invention into everything we do. It's why we support imagination in our community. It's why we embrace a no-rules approach to brewing, and it's why our brew pub will be a place where the old is transformed into the fantastically new. So that's always been our mission, taking something old, reinventing it for the modern age. And that's what we plan to do with Days as well. So this is a first look at some of our plans for the site. Maybe it's a bit obscure, but that's the curved front there if you were looking at it from the intersection. And we plan to have a large patio space out front. Lots of foliage, maybe not quite that much. I think the designer went a little overboard. But, and we plan to maintain, obviously, the heritage character of the building. So a few details on what we have planned. We're going to have a large selection of house brewed beers. So that's the premise of a brew pub, is you're brewing the beer on site and you're offering a large selection to your customers. We're going to have a full service gourmet beer hall menu. So it's going to be meat and cheese platters, bratwurst, things like that, but elevated. It's going to be almost kind of a gourmet feel. With the patio included, we will have the capacity for up to 180 patrons, but it will average more like 100 throughout the rest of the year. And we're working with local artists and designers to create a very interactive, imaginative space. And we feel like that's in keeping with the mission of the Simcoe Street Art District. We want to really build on that and do what we can to promote that. We'll also have room for private events there. So just an idea of kind of the style of food, elevated but simple food. It would be at a mid-price point, something that's very accessible but very delicious. So as part of keeping up this, reinventing the old into the new, we want to maintain the industrial heritage of the building, but also bring it forward into the future. And so we're working with, like I said, local artists and designers to create a very imaginative space. This is inspiration. This isn't exactly what it's going to look like, but you can see we're going to be offering something a little bit different from the norm here in Collingwood. And if you remember, the building is separated into two sections. There's the newer spot with the curved front that was built in the 40s, and then there's the older building that was built sometime in 1860s or 70s. We're not even certain. So the brew pub, the brewing equipment's going to be in the new part with the curved front, and then in the old part we're going to have a different kind of seating zone with more intimate seating, maybe a little cocktail bar, and a stage for musical performances. So that's basically what our plan is at this stage. We are hoping to open late summer, but that is a very quickly moving target. We're doing our best to stay on track, but there's a lot of moving parts. So we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have at this time.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Committee members, any questions for Saunders?
A comment and a question. Congratulations, guys. This looks like a great plan. We look forward to having you open and having a beer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, that's what he said. Awesome. Oh, sorry, Deputy Mayor.
Just a very quick question. The south side of the building, there was an enclosed area. Is that for parking, or will that be opened up for any public space? No. It's the space on the south side
By
of the
the-
building.
by the arena?
The arena.
Yeah, so we'll have, we're we'll have some parking spots there. The building is actually getting extended back towards where Mogo sits. So that behind the Heritage Building is basically being extended back there. So there's kind of parking there. And then, you know, we've got a lot of plans, but opening it up as well for, you know, special events and things like that in the back.
Maybe you can't answer this today, but would it be your plan then that the pedestrian way that goes from actually right here through the alley past Gibson's would be able to go right out to St. Marie?
I mean, we've definitely talked about it. Kind of depends a little bit on how things get set up in the back there. But I mean, it's definitely been a conversation piece for sure. Yeah.
Thank you again, John.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay, so moving into staff reports, 6.1, P 2019-13, an authorization bylaw to execute a site plan control agreement by the Jasper Group Office Building 201 Raglan. And I'll ask our Director of Planning to set us up here for this discussion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do believe there's some slides for this, I hope. Okay. Let's see what the first one is. This is at the corner of Raglan and Hume Street. It's the southeast corner. We've been working on a site plan agreement, for a number of months now. I believe they came in initially to see us in May. And they've developed a site plan for an office building. The footprint of the office building is around 4,500 square feet. Let's keep going on our slides. Yeah, there's the ground floor of the office building with parking around the building. And there will be one entrance that will be a joint entrance with the neighbors out onto Hume Street, and the other entrance exit will be out onto Raglan Street. Let's keep going. There's the landscaping plan and the landscaping details of the plan. And next we have the building elevation. That's what the proposed building will look like. And yes, I think that's probably it for slides. Okay. The total square footage available will be about 11,500 square feet for commercial units. And we're certainly looking forward to this building being constructed. It's Jasper's Group, the design firms. They're going to be, their head office is going to be in a fair portion of the building, and then there'll also be some units for rent. And Madam Chair, certainly I'd be happy to answer any questions in addition to that.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone in the gallery who would like to speak to this agenda item? Okay, seeing none. The recommendation that the Development and Operations Services Standing Committee receive and refer the following recommendation to the next meeting of Council. That staff report P 2019-13 be received and Council enact and pass an authorization bylaw to execute a site plan control agreement for the Jasper Group Office Building 201 Raglan Street. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Mayor Saunderson, Councillor Doherty, any discussion or questions through to the Director? Saunderson?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair, to Director Farrar. My understanding is that there's 5 units in the proposed building, and so given that the builder, Jasper Group, will be one of them, it looks like there'll be probably 4 tenants. Do we have any idea what other uses are permitted there, Nancy?
Yes, through the chair to Mayor Saunderson, permitted uses. Well, we wouldn't be putting a motor vehicle dealership there, but we could be having some other, and I would think it would be mostly office kind of uses. It would not be medical offices, and I want to be clear about that medical offices would not be permitted in this building. And the reason they wouldn't be permitted is, frankly, there just isn't enough parking for medical offices. Medical offices do have another parking standard and really could not be met on this property. But it is general highway commercial kind of uses, so it could be a restaurant in part of the building, it could be a vet clinic, it could be, I said business, personal service uses, place of entertainment. The permitted retail commercial establishments include things like small furniture store, home improvement store, and maybe a convenience store. That's just a sample of the kind of highway commercial uses that would be permitted on this property.
And again, following up through you, Madam Chair, given those uses you've discussed, the proposed 30 parking spaces are sufficient?
Through the chair to Mayor Saunderson, yes, the amount of parking provided would be sufficient for the size of building, with the certainly classification that there is not going to be medical offices in this building. It just is not big enough for that kind of, or there's not sufficient parking for medical offices because they do have a higher rate.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Councillor Doherty?
Thank you. So the mayor actually just asked one question. The other question was, I see that there's a lighting plan in place, and I see reference also to having concern for lighting spreading beyond the immediate landscape and affecting the highway. I'm wondering if there's been any consideration for dark sky lighting for the development.
Through the chair to Councillor Doherty, I think that's our standard practice these days. I don't think we basically allow anything else, to be honest, Madam Chair. Through you to Councillor Doherty.
Thank you, and it wasn't clear to me, but I'm glad. Thank you. Those are all my questions.
Thank you. Yes, I believe the principals did address that in the public session. It's, when they presented to us, they did refer to the dark sky. Any other questions? Yes, Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, through you to the chair. Just looking at the drawings provided by Crozer and Associates. So this is being proposed to move forward independent of the rest of that footprint that is Raglan and the Prairie River Parkway. Sorry, not the Prairie River Parkway, but Prairie River Parkway.
Through Madam Chair to Deputy Mayor Hall. Yes, it's independently owned from the balance of the properties who are owned by another developer. But there is some kind of an agreement for the entrance, because the entrance does cross the neighbor's property onto Hume Street. So there does have to be cooperation and there's an easement, so mutual access across the front of the property for the occupants of this property to be able to get out onto Hume Street. And they have, quite fortuitously, they've all used the same engineering firm, and that was done on purpose.
Okay. The rendering that was up on the screen, just for comment, that one, thank you. That's, I'm assuming, if I'm looking, I guess, southeast from the traffic lights that are at Raglan and Hume Street, is that correct?
Through Madam Chair to Deputy Mayor Hall, yes, that is the correct.
So in theory, that's the Holiday Inn, that's kind of that block, that architecturally off to
Yes.
the right. Okay. My only comment, this is a really, well, architecturally I quite like it. And this came before council back in maybe 2012. Not the same applicant, the mortgagee is the same.
Through the chair to Deputy Mayor Hall, yeah, there have certainly been previous proposals for this property. I'm sorry, I can't remember the exact year, but you're absolutely correct. It's not the first time we've seen a plan for this property.
Okay. All right. So if there's no other questions, then I'll call the vote. All in favor? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, so 6.2 P 2019-14 application for tree cutting permit, Sunbelt Rentals Block 6, registered plan 51M 1154. Director Ferrer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let's just go to where we. So this is on the north side of Mountain Road. I guess it doesn't show on this slide because I guess it wasn't there, but it is right beside Van Dolders. So there's Van Dolders, and then there's a new road that's being constructed that will lead into the back of this subdivision. I believe the road is called Greco Road. And then this is a piece of property that's just on the east side of the new proposed road. And there is a proposed use, which is Sunbelt Rentals. Sunbelt Rentals, they actually are located on Mountain Road at the moment. They're 2 buildings away. This is a much larger expansion, or so it's an expansion for them. It's a much larger establishment than where they currently are. They are very close to having site plan approval. We anticipate having site plan approval within the next 2 months. We're down to the 3rd submission of drawings, so we're getting very close, Madam Chair, to having a site plan submission. The reason they are asking for approval to clear the trees at this point is that they don't want to have to wait till September to be able to start building. And if they don't clear the trees by April 15th, then they have to wait to the end of bird breeding season, so they're almost into end of August before they can start work on the site, and they would like to start before that, and that's the reason for the request.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone from the public who would like to come forward and speak? Yes, sir. You could introduce yourself and sign the sheet behind when you're finished.
Yes. Good evening. Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Greg Barker. I represent Best Pro Corporation, the applicant for this. I don't have any additional comments. I think the director has provided a good overview, but I am available to committee should committee have any questions of me. So, thank
We
you.
appreciate that. Thank you. Is there anyone else in the public wishing to speak? Okay, seeing none. That the Development and Operations Services Standing Committee receive and refer the following recommendation to the next meeting of Council. That staff report P 2019-14 be received and Council support granting a permit to destroy trees for the vacant lands prior to site plan approval for the Sunbelt Rentals development with the following conditions attached. Tree cutting and removal shall occur prior to April 15th, 2019. Boundary trees shall not be removed, affected unless permission is obtained from the adjacent property owner. And lastly, appropriate sedimentation and erosion control measures shall be implemented. A mover and a seconder, please. Mayor Saunderson. Deputy Mayor. Okay, and questions? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. Through you to the director. Looking at the map here on the left-hand side, I think it says 207. 2017, sorry. That's the Van Doler location.
Yes.
So the highlighted areas, the 2 highlighted areas, when you're out there, is tree cutting already taken place on the property, or is it just, because out the back, it certainly looks like it's already been clear cut.
Through the chair to Deputy Mayor Hull, I'm certainly aware of them clearing the trees for the road allowance, because there is a road allowance that's under construction at this point in time. So the road allowance, and then there's a turning circle at the end of the road allowance as well that is also under construction. So because there is a approved plan of subdivision for that construction of that road, all of those trees have already been cleared. The other trees that have been cleared are sort of around the edges of some of the properties. And this was originally 2 lots. So the owner is proposing to buy 2 lots as opposed to 1 lot. And so that's why around the edges of those lots, they were cleared. They were cleared, from what I remember, so that people would be able to see what they were buying and where get the survey stakes all in place and do some initial sort of investigation of the properties.
So then the tree cutting area that we're talking about is that strip on the right-hand side. The permission that's required is the landowner that's on the east side of the property.
Through the chair to Deputy Mayor Hall, it's really everything in yellow where they want to clear the trees.
Sorry, maybe my apologies, maybe I misspoke. The area in the highlighted area in the hashed tag area on the right-hand side.
Yes.
That's the area to be protected. That's the buffer.
Well, there really are, through the chair to Deputy Mayor, they really are clearing the entire site. So it's not like there's going to be buffers around the edge. They will be leaving all of the boundary trees, because the boundary trees have to be left unless they have the approval of the neighbor. But the rest of the trees are either being cleared or have already been cleared.
Perhaps, Madam Chair, through you, if I could maybe clarify, is in 2018, so currently the property is owned by Vandals, the entire subdivision lands. And so my understanding is in 2017, they cleared where their showroom is now located. In 2018, they applied for and received a tree removal permit for the area that I think you're referring to, the hatched area that has the 2018 labels around it. So along like the right-hand side of where the yellow is. So that was previously cleared by Van Boulder, not through our firm or the current applicant. But what we're proposing now is to clear the balance of the property. As the director had referred to, the sort of the boundaries of the two blocks were cleared to facilitate sort of give potential purchasers a visual sort of representation of what blocks they were purchasing. So in 2018, they applied for and received a permit to clear essentially the boundaries of the two blocks. That was previously done, like I said, in 2018 through Van Boulder. So I don't want to speak on their behalf. They're not client, but just to clarify if that helps.
And through the chair, the other area that, from what I understand, had to be cleared is there's actually a drainage channel that goes down the far right-hand side of that map. So that had to be cleared in order to install the drainage channel.
Okay, I won't hold this up, but I just, and maybe I can have a conversation through you to the chair, or to the director in the week prior to council. My concern is that, and I think Councillor Doherty a couple of weeks ago with regards to another property, is we did speak to a developer about creating a buffer, and that buffer was then established. It didn't unfortunately move forward, but at least that was sort of a bit of a win. That we get into a situation where we grant clearing on one side and then the other side is cleared, and what was intended as a boundary is no longer a boundary because both sides get cleared.
Okay, so that was my question, really the only boundary trees left are on the north side of this diagram, correct?
Madam Chair, there would be trees, and boundary trees mean really that they are right on the property line with the neighbor. There would be some on the north side, and there would also be some on the, what I'll call the east side, because on the east side they would have left what I would refer to as boundary trees, which are the trees that they actually share with their neighbors. They would have already cleared a strip where, frankly, there's maybe a ditch is not the correct term, but there's going to be a drainage swale down the, going north to south down the east side of the property. And I'm not sure whether it's yet installed, but it certainly will be installed shortly. And that will go to the back of the property. And then in addition to that, the along Mountain Road and also along the new road, all of the trees are cleared.
Okay, all right. Any other questions, Councillor Doherty?
Yes, thank you very much. Through your worship, through to,
Thank you for that raise.
your chairmanship, to the director. So it's not customary for us to issue a tree cutting permit when we don't have a site plan approval, is that correct?
We, actually what happens is that through the Madam Chair to Councillor Doherty, if they have a site plan agreement, they don't need a tree cutting permit from us because they have all of their permissions in place. So we don't require them to have a tree cutting permit because they frankly have already been through us and we have all of their approvals. So they're here because they don't have all of their approvals from us yet, and therefore they need a tree cutting permit.
Okay, thank you. And as Deputy Mayor Hall alluded to, I am a little uncomfortable approving this request in that if site plan approval does not go through, then we have clear-cut lands for however long it will take. And we have numerous examples around the community where we have clear-cut land, quite frankly, prematurely. And in addition, right now we have a canopy study that's in place, and so it seems to me that we should not be approving the speculative removal of trees until that study and strategy is completed.
So that's not really a question, just a comment?
I guess I'll comment.
Thank you. I just want to make sure I wasn't supposed to be directing it anywhere to anyone. Any other comments? Yes, Mayor Saunders.
Just a couple of questions and then maybe a comment through you to Nancy. My understanding is that the NBCA has approved this tree cutting removal.
Madam Chair, that's my understanding, is that I believe that they have the NBCA approval for the works on this property, yes.
And in your comments, Nancy, you indicated that they're at their third submission on the site plan approval process and that it's anticipated would be April or May.
Through Madam Chair to the Mayor, yeah, that's my understanding, but certainly the gentleman is here, he can probably speak better than I can about when they're going to get everything all wrapped up for us.
If I may, Madam Chair, through you, yes, actually prior to this evening, I submitted to meet the planning department earlier this afternoon our third submission materials. So I would expect that development is imminent. In speaking with planning staff, they've been generally supportive and giving some approximate timeframes throughout the process. So in reading this report and through discussion with Nancy as well as Mark Bryan, we're anticipating this to come forward within a month or perhaps as much as 2. But certainly 3 submissions is typical, I suppose, or sort of average, I guess. But that's where we are at this point with our site plan.
Thank you for that. So if I understand the concern, where the tree cutting permit is being asked for because we're butting up against the April 15 timeline that would then delay them to the middle of August.
Through Madam Chair to Mayor Saunderson, that's correct, yes.
And failing that issue, we would be waiting until they had their site plan approval.
Through Madam Chair, well, if they don't get started and get the trees down, they're waiting to the end of August anyway, because the only time you can take trees down is not in bird breeding season. So even if they get their site plan approval in, let's say, May or June at the latest, they would be held up till end of August in order to be able to start work on the site.
All right, and just on another note, because we've had this discussion around this table before, when you're talking about, we're not talking buffer trees, we're talking boundary trees. What is the process to identify a boundary tree?
Through Madam Chair to Mayor Saunderson, it's usually up to a surveyor basically to identify which trees are absolutely on the boundary. And we do, because we've had some issues in the past, we do actually, usually part of the requirement of getting a tree cutting permit is that it is a surveyor who stakes where the sedimentation fence goes to ensure that the fence is in the correct location and that whoever is clearing the trees is not clearing trees on, frankly, on their neighbor's property, and they clear the trees correctly and avoid boundary trees.
And that study or survey has been done in this case?
Through the chair to the mayor, I would prefer that, I assume that they've identified boundary trees or done the surveys, but I'm sorry, I don't know.
Through you, Madam Chair. So the proposal today, so a specific tree inventory and preservation plan has not been prepared for this specific application. The main reason being because the boundary trees were previously, I shouldn't say boundary trees, but on this slide, as you see here, the area that's in yellow is what we're proposing to remove. So we don't, in effect, we're not anticipating issues with boundary trees, just given the physical separation between the lands which were previously granted a permit in 2018, which is that sort of hatched area along the east side or the right-hand side, as well as the shared internal, we'll say shared, for lack of a better term, but the northern property limit. Those boundary trees between the blocks internal to the subdivision were previously approved for clearing. So through this application, we have not submitted the boundary tree or prepared a boundary tree inventory because we're not anticipating to have to clear or run into any issues, as that was a previously dealt with matter.
Yeah, if I can have a follow-up question, just how big are those hatched areas that we're talking about? What's the scale of that? Is it 10 meters, 15 meters?
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, I don't have the exact area on here. I'm looking quickly through the staff report. I believe the site area in total, I believe, is just over 1 hectare. Bear with me, I can get you that. I can try to get you that number if that's available in here.
Oh, sorry,
That's
okay, Director McDonald might have,
Okay.
be able to help.
Just for clarity, you're talking about the width of the 2018 hatch?
Yes.
It's approximately 5 meters, just by driving by it every day, it looks like about 5-meter width.
So we're well clear of the red boundary. That was really my question, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so if there's no other questions, I'll call for the vote on P 2019-14. All those in favor? Those opposed? So noted. Thank you very much. All right, so P 2019-15 encroachment agreement at 33 St. Marie Street. Nancy, if you could give us the summary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This one is pretty simple, or should be pretty simple. I think there it is. This is what 33 St. Marie Street looks like. Where there is an old front porch on this property, and the property is being raised, having a new foundation put underneath it, and the porch is getting a new base and new footings, new posts, and they're getting rid of the stone, which is not really typical for this kind of house. Anyway, the old encroachment agreement is our lawyers recommended that we replace it because it was a la 1990, and now we're doing a 2019 version as opposed to a 1990 version. Simply a replacement of the existing agreement.
Thank you, and just for clarification, it's already been signed by the homeowners, correct?
Yes, it has.
Okay. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak to this encroachment matter? Seeing none, then I'll put our recommendation on the floor, that the Development and Operations Services Standing Committee receive and refer the following recommendation to the next meeting of Council. The staff report P 2019-15, recommending Council authorize approval of the attached encroachment agreement for 33 St. Marie Street be approved. A mover and a seconder, please. Deputy Mayor Hall, Councillor Doherty. Thank you. Questions? Committee members? Pretty straightforward.
Yeah, pretty straightforward. Just one quick question through you too, Nancy. It talks about the public liability insurance we're going to require to be put on there. I would imagine it would include things like trip and falls or ice coming off the veranda coming onto the town property, something like that.
Through the chair to Mayor Saunderson, yes, that would be the standard requirement these days.
Good, thank you.
Councillor Doherty.
Thank you very much, through you to Director for our, just a question in regard to the termination of the encroachment agreement. The agreement, as I see it here, only requires 1 month's notice. Is that sufficient, given that we're talking about a physical structure? Through the chair to Councillor Doherty. Well, it's been agreed by all the parties, so I guess it's only a porch. It's not the house. I guess I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. 6.4, P 2019-16 is an authorization bylaw to execute a development agreement, Donald and Catherine Ross at 25 Catherine Street. So if I could trouble you again, Director Farrer, to
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This is a requirement of a severance and a variance that was done on this property. The owners would like to maintain the existing garage behind this house, and then they're going to sever the lots in two and then build 2 new houses, one on each lot. This agreement would give them 2 years to get that work done, and in which case there'd be a new house and with the existing garage in the back. I gather that it is a substantial garage, and I gather it's in, I can't tell you I've been in the garage, but I gather it's in better shape than the house. So the theory is that let's keep the garage and rebuild the house. The house will be obviously severed, the lot will be severed in 2. That's been through the Committee of Adjustment, and there were no concerns with the committee.
okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone in attendance this evening that would like to come up and speak to this matter?
Chair, my name is Andrew Piscuzzo here on behalf of Donald and Catherine Ross. Just here in case there's any questions, and hopefully this is a good one.
Appreciate that, thank you very much. All right, anyone else in the gallery? No, seeing none. Put on the floor, the motion is that the Development and Operations Services Standing Committee receive and refer the following recommendation to the next meeting of council. The staff report P 2019-16 be received, and council enact and pass an authorization bylaw to execute a development agreement for the property addressed as 25 Catherine Street. Mover and seconder, please. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Doherty, questions, comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, you have a question?
Yes,
Oh, go ahead.
indeed, thank you. And actually, through you to Mr. Pascuzzo, as you're probably aware, recently there's been a lot of attention focused on infill development and how appropriate or not it winds up being in any particular neighborhood. And I'm wondering if you can give me an idea of what kind of structure is proposed, and if it is sympathetic with the rest of the neighborhood in terms of setbacks, in terms of height, in terms of massing, etc.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the member. I guess I compare it to the severance that was approved, and the development is occurring right across from Vanier, just just south of this area along Catherine Street. There's 2 units that are going in, so what we're proposing is 2 single-family homes. Footprint would be approximately 1,200 square feet on each side of the severed and retained parcel, and obviously the garage is the main focus of the agreement in front of you today, because it's a very new garage as opposed to the structure that's being torn down, which is more than 100 years old. So with regard to comparables to the neighborhood, I would say the structures may be, the proposed single-family dwellings may be a little bit smaller than what's existing in the immediate area, and in comparison, a very similar severance with lot frontages that are very comparable has been approved and is developing, as I said, just down the street.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, so no other questions from the committee. All those in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, so now we're on to 6.5, P 2019-17, an authorization bylaw to execute an amending site plan control agreement, Living Waters Phase 4, 9 and 15 Harbor Street East, 300 Balsam Street. Director Farrar, if you can take us through this, please.
I'll certainly try. I imagine there'll be some questions on this one, Madam Chair, but we'll
All
get
good.
started. The Phase 4 of Living Waters includes 49 suites, and 37 of the suites are what we refer to as lockout suites, and then the other dozen would be not lockout suites. So here's an aerial view of the property, and an indication as to where Phase 4 is proposed to go. And next, we put this in because this shows the 2006 site plan, and the 2006 site plan indicates in many ways a building that is located virtually where this proposal shows that it will be located, all along the front of the property, or what I'm calling the front of the property, and then also along Harbor Street, and then in addition to that, what is shown on our 2006 site plan was the Bear Estate. So in many ways, this phase is in keeping with the long-term plan for this property. Here's the site plan that we're dealing with today, and it does, as everyone knows, it's got Phase 1, 2, and 3 that have been built over the last decade and a half almost. And then in addition to that, Phase 4, which is going to the north of Phase 1. All right, next. There's just, and I'm sorry, I admit it, the landscape plan is pretty hard to see at this level what the differences are. Okay, here's the proposed west elevation of the property. It is very similar to what was built in Phases 2 and 3. And then I think we probably have the east elevation. There again, This is very similar to what was built in phases 2 and 3 from an architectural style perspective. It is consistent with the 2 of the other phases of the building. I believe that's it. So certainly we do have parking for the 49 units is being provided on site. There is some amenity area on the ground floor and also some parking on the ground floor. I believe there's a theater that's shown in part of the ground floor as well. And so we'll, I guess from there, Madam Chair, we're probably best to try and answer any questions that council may, or that the committee may have, any questions that the public may have.
Okay, so I'm going to go to the public first, and just as a matter of just our timing things, can I have a show of hands of how many people are anticipating speaking to this agenda item? Okay, thank you very much. All right, so everybody's going to have their time, and you have your 5 minutes, so we'll start from the front here.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening to you and members of the committee. Madam Clerk, for the record, my name is Colin Travis of Travis & Associates. We are the planning consultants of record assisting the applicant with this file. As a sidebar, we've been associated with this file since around 2010 or thereabouts. Primarily, Madam Chair, we have the project architect with us this evening. We have my counsel with regards to landscape and environmental. Mr. Law is here this evening as well to answer questions, and many in the audience are actually employees. And the idea is to show that in addition to the site planning matters, there are other things there are other considerations as well. There are other very important attributes to this plan and the need to proceed as soon as we can. There has been and is reference to amendments to existing site plan agreements, and in essence those amendments are additions to the parent agreement. As Nancy referred, Madam Chair, to the original site plan, the intent was to have a phased development, and standard approach when looking at a phased development in this town was to have a principal first agreement, and then subsequent phases would be added to that agreement by way of amendment. So we're seeing phase 4 right now, and that phase 4 reflects the existing market conditions, which is why it's been sort of over a 5-phase project to meet those market conditions in this local area. The questions that have arisen over why are we doing phasing, well, that's why we're doing phasing, that's why the amending word is used. There is a question over the application that was first submitted to Nancy's department in March of 2018. That submission included phases 4, it included phase 5, and it included the Bear Estate. Towards the end of last year, we asked for a deferral of that application while we reassessed the size that we could handle in terms of the market, and also to address some longer-term parking monitoring programs that we will bring forward when we come with Phase 5 and with the Bear Estate. There is a letter, and I'm not sure, Madam Chair, whether that's available, that was submitted last week under my signature as a further explanation as to some of the questions and the circumstances surrounding the phase 4. One of the last points I do want to emphasize is that Mr. Law has made it quite clear that before we come back to this council with phase 5 or with the Bear Estate, that he does want to engage in a consultation with SOS and with the neighboring property owners. At that time, we want to have all of the questions on the table, and we will attempt to address all of the questions and issues raised in that consultation process. But for now, again, we're looking at phase 4, and there is an imperative to proceed now as soon as we can with phase 4. Having said that, Madam Chair, any questions arise that you think are best answered by the architect, Mr. Henry Chu, is in the audience, or with regards to environmental matters, Mike Hensel is here. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you for being here. All right, so our next speaker, I think I saw someone's hand under the exit sign over here, sir. Come on up.
Good evening, Madam Chairman. My name is Don Bromett. I'm here representing the Simcoe County Condo Corporation 408, which is Mariners Haven, which is immediately to the south of the proposed expansion. And we appreciate the need for growth and trying to find employment and the expansion of many services in our community. At the same time, we feel that it's absolutely. I'm sorry, I've just come off of a very bad cold. That we're very supportive of expansion in the community. At the same time, we believe that there has to be consideration given to the community as a whole, as well as the neighboring properties around living waters. And we understand that they've now separated Phase 5 and Bear Estate in order to push this through and get moving on Phase 4. We've looked at the documents as best we can. We're not professional engineers and architects, and we believe that some of the same issues that were raised and presented to Council last year from the March 2018 application still exist as far as shortage of parking is concerned, in the sense that there are the math adds up this time, which is good, but there are key components and elements that were actually left out of achieving the calculations. So previously approved numbers, Phase 1 through 3, for example, 35 parking spots were allocated for a 120-seat restaurant. That's now been, for some reason, taken down to 12 spots. So we're not quite sure why these new adjustments have come in, other than convenience to satisfy the parking requirements for Phase 4. So our recommendation is this not be sent through to Council for approval at this stage until there be a secondary or third-party review of the parking and not that of the architects or engineers being employed by the organization that's building this, in order to satisfy Council that there is adequate parking. We believe that there is already a parking issue there today, and this shortage of parking is going to exacerbate the already significant traffic issues that we have in the summer and the weekends that overflows into public parking areas such as the boat docking area and the around the marina, and so there's already people parking there from the hotel and the restaurants, and so we feel that there should be some further study being done before this be approved and passed on to Council. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And if you, I'll just ask maybe Director Fair just to respond in terms of the parking calculation, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Now, and certainly I do, Mr. Chu is here, and he is the architect, so he probably knows even more than I do about the parking, but there's a couple of things and a couple of points that I would like to make. For all of the lockout suites, it's my understanding, and I'm sure Mr. Chu, he'll tell me if I'm wrong, they have used the 1.5 spaces per lockout standard for every lockout suite. It's also my understanding that there's been one space for each individual room in addition to that. In addition to that, there's been 0.75 spaces for each marina slip. In addition to that, there's been spaces set aside for the amenity areas, and the amenity areas calculated not as a separate restaurant but as part of the hotel are, I believe it's 0.2 or 2 spaces per 100 square meters, right? Yes. And in addition to that, there's been 55 spaces for the Bear Estate. I think I've got all the different parking calculations. So what has happened, and is that in this case we have tried to cover the different uses that are located on the site and ensure that we use today's parking standards for each of those uses. And certainly, I guess Mr. Chu can speak probably better than I can about it, but that's my, when I review the drawings, that's what I see has happened in this case, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you, Director. Welcome.
Thank you, Nancy. My name is Henry Chu. I'm the architect for Mr. Law on this project since day one. So we are the original architect, and then we carry on until today. The parking issue that we have worked with staff during phase 3, I think there's the change. And at that time, I think there's a lot of questions coming up because at phase 3, we have a different set of number to work with and also different floor area to work with. As of today, we are doing phase 4, which we revisit all the numbers that we have in the past, including the area, which we might call amenity floor area, which is dedicated for public use and also for hotel guests. So by saying that we would recalculate and relook at what could be excluded from this parking calculation, which we would conclude it part of the washroom, part of the stair, mechanical room, kitchen, those are excluded because they are not dedicated for the guests or the public. The parking ratio that it was also changed in the 2014. We have a set of number, which was at that time is 1.2 unit for the lock-off unit. Now we are looking at 1.5. And also there was a one parking for every boat slip, and now we changed it to 0.75. The only one that we kept from day 1, which is the phase 1, the banquet hall, which we keep at every 4 people that we provide one parking space. So those are the numbers that we'll be using on phase 4, and we work with staff and look at each numbers carefully, and we also have red line drawings showing what area that we are included for the amenity floor area calculation. So in February last month, I have a letter to staff and stating those numbers that we presented are truly represent what is there on site. Even though there might be some number people question why is that change, and because of their allowance that we could deduct certain floor area, and also the change during the course of this hotel and amenity space. And that's why like at phase 4, we consolidate all the numbers, parking standard, and we concur and assure this council that those are true representation of what's there on site and what we indicated on the drawing. And I guess like if there's any question regarding to the way it's calculated, I'm happy to answer those questions.
Thank you very much for your response. Okay. The next person wishing to speak, please, at the back there, please come forward. Welcome.
Hello, I'm Karina Williamson. I live at the Boardwalk. If you look at that aerial diagram, where that horseshoe is, right on the bottom overlooking the Bear Estates is where our unit is. And we're right near the Bear Estates Convention Center as well. And my son's on the ground floor of our unit. So when you look out my son's window, you're looking at the willow trees and the beautiful greens. But if you look to the left, you see the Bear Estates. So probably about, guessing 200 feet is where the convention center is. And we've endured weddings and conventions and events for the last 6 years. And when I say endured, it's because after the night's over, you have 220 people flooding the area, drunk people leaving, going in their shuttles, going in their taxis, deciding to walk. And I could only imagine what that'll look like. It's 800 feet, so I'm upset, but it's not acceptable. We cannot accept this.
Thank you. Could I ask you to sign our sheet there, please? Thank you. All right, I think I saw another speaker. Yes, sir. At the back, please.
Good evening. My name is George Irwin, and I'm a director of SOS Collingwood. SOS's purpose is to advocate for the recognition of the environmental and economic importance. That me?
Oh, I think everybody's then.
For the economic importance and protection of Collingwood's pristine and sensitive wetland areas. We've been very active on the Living Waters Bear Estate development issue since last June. In fact, our organization was formed in response to the development. We've made numerous written and oral submissions on this development, including 3 presentations to this committee last August. In the process, we've identified and brought to the council and public's attention a number of legitimate issues and problems with the proposed development, including issues of non-compliance with the official plan, zoning bylaw, and a flawed environmental assessment. To date, the town has not provided us with any response to any of these issues that we've identified, which is quite disappointing given the amount of work we've done and the financial resources that we've expended. Which brings me to my first point I wish to raise tonight, and that is the lack of public consultation on this development. SOS has been calling for this since the beginning of the issue arose last summer, and in last fall's election, many of you responded to our candidate questionnaire indicating that you supported an open and improved consultation process on this development. Well, I'm here tonight to say that that really has not occurred. Furthermore, I want to register how shocked we were when we first heard about this latest application and the process and how it's been handled and the whole idea of it being brought to the committee tonight. It was only on March 1st that the town first advised SOS and others of the new development application, even though the town knew about it months ago. In that notice, the town said that the earliest this application would come to the committee was March 18th, which is today. Then on March 8th, SOS wrote to the town, you all received this correspondence, and the purpose of the letter was to seek consultation and public involvement in the consideration of this development that many of you indicated you supported. We clearly said in that letter that we wanted to be heard on the issue and be involved. And then out of left field, we were advised only this past Friday, after the deadline had passed for us to apply to make a formal deputation to this committee, that the new development application would in fact be placed on the agenda for tonight's meeting, depriving us of the chance to make a formal deputation and leaving us little time to prepare. At best, it appears to us that the process has been mishandled. At worst, it appears it has been deliberately managed to marginalize our participation. My second point relates to the ad hoc and incremental site planning approval process that has plagued this site from the beginning. Tonight's application represents the 5th time that the site plan agreement for this property has been amended. And it wasn't until last June that the developer tabled all of the remaining phases of the project in the final all-inclusive development plan that the project was actually revealed to anyone, including the public. Then, when legitimate concerns were raised and various issues I spoke about earlier were identified and brought forward, not just by SOS, but by other groups as well, the final all-inclusive application was deferred, not withdrawn, not amended, just deferred. Now we find out that despite the town still having the final all-inclusive development application in its possession, that it intends to revert to the same old problematic incremental site approval process of the past. At the risk of being provocative, it appears to us that the development application process is being managed to avoid the real and fundamental problems with the full plan. But the goal is still to bring the plan forward. Let me read from a covering letter that was received by the town in its latest application. And this is from C.C. Tatum and Associates, and it was January 17th. As discussed previously with the town, Phase 5 and the Bear Estates addition have been removed and will be submitted separately following the construction of Phase 4. That's our point. If it is clear that the plan is to eventually be brought forward as an all-inclusive plan, and the town already has the detailed information, we ask the question, why is the town not considering the plan for its site, for this site in its entirety? Why is it allowing a portion of the plan to proceed when it knows full well there are major issues with the plan that need to be addressed? Why is the town compromising its position by approving a portion of the plan when it knows that there are major issues with the plan still to deal with? SOS Collingwood encourages this committee to require that the full plan be presented in one application so that the full council and the public can address it in a transparent, consultative way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Irwin, and I will refer your questions for response, but first of all, I would just like to comment on the insinuation that I can assure you there would be no manipulation of the process whatsoever. I would defend staff to the highest regard in that, and I would not deem that a fair comment. But as to your other questions with respect to things at the site and the phasing, I'll ask Director Fair to respond. Thank you.
Thank you, and we have been working on this property, as everyone knows, for many, many years at this point, and they have decided to proceed in phases. I myself asked the question, when are you proposing to move forward with phase 5 in the Bear Estate? And what I was told, and Mr. Law is here, he can certainly answer for himself, was that he has no idea when he will be proceeding with that phase. So I guess if there's no indication as to when we will be building or when there is a plan to build the next phase, and what he is asking at this point is to build another phase, being phase 4, from our perspective, I find it difficult for us to hold up something based on the fact of something else that may not be built in the near future or at a known date at this point in time. Everyone understands that there are a number of questions that are going to have to be asked with phase 5. We are very aware of that. We also understand that there's a number of issues that are going to come up with phase 5. Most of them have to do with parking, and in my view, and certainly some of the environmental issues that are going to be discussed again, I'm sure. But at this point, it's my understanding that there is no firm date as to when we would be moving forward with that. It could be many years down the road. So on the basis that some other phase that may be a number of years off, the applicant, and I will let him speak for himself, would like to proceed with this part of the plan. And when staff looked at what they would like to advance at this point, it looks like it was part of the plan for over a decade, this area where the development is now proposed. And I guess I would have to ask Mr. Law or someone to speak, because they certainly know a lot more about their plans than I do.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Law, if you'd like to provide a few more specifics.
Good evening, Madam Chair, and all the other council members, and Department Nancy. It has been a long haul. It's been a long haul that I came to the town in 1992, and it has been 20-some years. And if, to be honest, if 20 years ago, or even 10 years ago, you asked me what you're going to do, and I have to tell you that, I cannot expect what to do in the next 5 years or in the next few years, other than we do our very best. We never asked what the town could do for us when I first came here. But to be humble, I always asked what we can do for the town. And I think I'm proud to share with you that, ever since I came here, originally the organization at that time was called Brewery. It was in the bankruptcy, in the recession in 1992. We have the belief in the town, and we have the belief that we could do something good for the community. As such though, and at that time we had less than 100 staff, and today we are proud to share that we have 500 staff, and many of the staff are here. They want to show the support. They want to show what kind of complicated and a very, very serious business that we are doing in here. And we are talking about so many people And we are talking about so many different departments in here. To run a business is not just like me and me and me. We're talking about running a business of we. We have the culture. We have the culture to understand the overall picture. And we like to share that through the last so many years, we have a lot of challenges. We have the financial challenges, and we have the transportation challenges. And at the most important thing was the financial crisis during year 2008 and 9. But we survived, and we excel. Why? Because of all these hardworking people. They could be silent. They are not doing much, but they are living here. They deserve to have a voice, and they are the ratepayer, and they are humble and hardworking, and they are the ambassador of Collingwood, because we have been virtually serving and touching with tens of thousands of the guests, and many of the guests, they turn into our permanent residents in Collingwood as well too, because we are the biggest ambassador and promoter of Collingwood, because we believe in here. This is a serious business, it's a series of investment, and I think the town should recognize that. Unlike so many of the towns in the West, and they are very much deserted. You know, so many people invited me to go there to do the investment, but I keep on telling myself though, I keep on asking what a Christian businessman is supposed to be. I always ask God, what is the right thing to do? And the right thing to do is about follow your heart. The right thing to do is about work with our co-worker. The right thing to do is to try to find the right thing to do. What is the right thing? The right thing is the current rule and regulation. We have been doing business for the past 20 some years. We always working with the town and the staff about the current regulation. Despite those things have been changed, like the architect mentioned before, but we still follow through about whatever here. We are not talking about if. We are not talking about my own opinion. We talk about something factual. And tonight we are not here talking about any other concern as people talking about, because they are not relevant tonight. And in due course, we will answer that question. At the same time, I can promise you those concerns will not be the concern in here. But at the same time, we have the business to move on thing. And we only know that phase 4 is what we need to do. And we need the phase 4 in order for all our 100 of the staff and 100 of the family. And they need to know what is going on and what is going on to move on in here. And that is our right. And that is what we are doing. And we have been doing this thing for the past 3 phases. What's so different about that? Whatever, I find is not good faith. I find it's not good faith that, other people try to delay us and tie us down. But we talk about this project in here. We talk about this project is over 50 million of investment. It's not any big or small, but this is a serious matter. And we need to talk about fairness and factual in here. And for every year, we make the financial economy impact to the town every year, over $33 million. And that is a sum of about the wages payment and the public tax. The more important thing is our hotel guests. They make, based on the professional calculation, this is a huge financial impact. We talk about employment. We talk about employment for all walks of life. It's not only the high-end people, the low-end people, it's for all walks of life in here. We have our passion to run a business with a mission hoping that would be to help to build Collingwood, be a model town to be. And that is really our heart going through like that though. As such though, we have been making quite a substantial support and contribution to the many of the local charity organizations, like the hospital, Georgian College, homeless people, underprivileged people, and so on and so forth. We even donate the land, which was called the Hens and Chicken Farm, just for the public to enjoy the openness and the environment. and we talk about environment. We are the environmental people. We care about that. For all the years, we have been very best, strive our very best to comply with all those kind of things in here. That is what a good corporate citizen is doing in here. I mean, for someone trying to tie me down, we delay our project in here, that is not a good thing. And by approving, by moving on the phase 4, does not take them out the opportunity to have a community consultation, which we have no problem with that one. But it's not tonight, it's not today. It's when we submit for the phase 5 and the best day. And coming back to about the phase 5 and the best day in here, we are going through the overall thing in here. Because, right now, I have going through the reflection that why I need to go through all this kind of thing. We need to go through further detail about the consultant's study, and we do it again, which also subject to the peers approval, the peer consultant, again, those kind of things. And we talk about parking, we got to go through about the actual finding, which we have to go through the summertime and so and so. And we're talking about the best day. We have a finding that we need to have a serious question about what the plan going to be. If I have to pay for so much over here, and this is just too much of a risk for me to do anything in here. And as such though, as a businessman, and it's a huge investment in here. If I'm telling you that I'm going to build this thing next year, I'll be lying to you, because it won't be happening for phase 5. For the rest of the phases, if we talk about 10 years, another decade, and hoping that I'm still young enough to take care of the challenge. And the thing is about, this is the kind of the business in here. We have no prediction. We're subject to the market condition. We're subject to so many different things in here. And at the same time, we are serious taking our responsibility. We are working very closely with the mainstream big business people, even the gentlemen that they're talking about the beer and all these things here. We are not only talking about ourselves, we're talking about the whole community and generating the economy and for the betterment of the whole town. And that's where I am now. And I don't see any kind of reason why we need to talk about for the rest of those things. I think the people target wrong. We are talking about phase 4. And this is just a repetition of for the past 3 times in here. And no one is going to force me to come up with a plan tomorrow about what I'm going to do.
Okay, thank
And
you.
so it's no point to tie the whole thing, beyond that.
Thank you, Mr. Bono. We hear your passion, and so what I've heard you confirm is that our director's comments regarding no information at this point for the next phase, and that you're very focused on phase 4 because your market information has told you that's where you should be. And I've summarized that correctly?
Yes. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, no, thank you. Okay. All right, do I have any other speakers? Thank you. At the back of the room, please come forward.
Good evening.
Welcome.
I'm Brenda Elliott, and I've been a resident of Cranberry Yacht Club since 2002. So I've seen a ton of development go from the developer that was just up here. And through every single phase, we as residents were never informed by anybody what was going in on the next stage. Our concern is not for jobs in the community and so on and so forth. We're very much for that. Our concern is the high density that is getting jammed into a very small space in the middle of a residential area bordering Georgian Bay. And our issues with going forward with Bear Estate, with the convention center, with the above ground parking lot is pollution, the traffic. That area has no room to handle all of those people. And so it's residents of the area that have got issues with the massive high density expansion, not jobs. We all want jobs. We're all here for jobs. And I've been coming to Collingwood since I've been 5 years old. I've seen the changes in Collingwood over the years. But I think we need to not just look at this as a business. We need to look at this as a residential and what it looks like for Collingwood. And looking after the shores of Georgian Bay and not jamming high density in one small area on a continuous basis. It just doesn't work that way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If you could sign the sheet behind for us, Brenda, that would be great. Thank you. All right. Any other speakers before we turn this over to the committee? All right. I don't see any. So, what we're going to consider is that the Development and Operations Services Standing Committee receive and refer the following recommendation to the next meeting of council. The staff report P 2019-17 be received, and council enact and pass an authorization bylaw to execute an amending site plan control agreement for 9 and 15 Harbour Street East and 300 Balsam Street, Living Waters Phase 4. I mover and a seconder.
Put on the table.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor and Mayor. Discussion, questions, comments? Anybody like to?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, I think to answer, maybe back to Mr. Chu, I just want to be very clear because the last time we were addressing this, we were talking about phases 4, 5 and the Bear Estate, and planning or parking and environmental issues were very much at the forefront then. So I'm wondering if we can just isolate some issues first. And number one is, and this may not be a fair question for the planning department, but I would like clarification for this before we come back next Monday. Does the town, as the approval authority, have the ability to compel the developer to come forward with future phases ahead of their planned schedule?
Thank you, through the chair to Mayor Saunderson. And I'm going to answer, and I'm going to actually check my answer because I feel that I should. I believe what we like to do is we like to have some indication of what's happening in the future, but we cannot compel that they come forward with all phases when they have no indication, as I understand from the speakers, that to build it for up to a decade. Our site plan agreements, you are to start construction within 2 years. If you're not starting construction within 2 years, then you're going to have to come back to us and renegotiate another agreement likely anyway. We do not like to negotiate things too far out because frankly standards change. So because standards change, there is a limit to how far out we like to negotiate things. Sometimes it's several years, but in this case, if it's way off in the future, it does make it very difficult for everyone, not just the residents, but for the developer and for the town to try and make commitments to things that frankly may change over time.
Okay, thank you for that. And one of your answers really triggered my next question, and that is on the planning numbers. We've heard from yourself and the architect, Mr. Chu, that after stage 3, the planning numbers changed. So can you just clarify for me, because I think this is an important aspect, that with relative to phase 4 only, are we comfortable that we have all the planning spaces that we need, or parking spaces that we need to accommodate the increased burden on this area?
Thank you through the chair to the mayor. We have used all of our latest parking standards to determine the number of parking spaces that are required for this development. For example, we have upped the requirement for lockout suites. At one point it was 1.2 per suite, and we've upped it for all of the suites on site to 1.5. So what we're trying to do, and it kind of goes back to my point as to how far out do we plan these things, it is evolving, and some of our parking standards have changed over time, and at this point we are using the latest parking standards that we have for this development. So based on that, I'm comfortable with the parking spaces that have been shown on site.
And so previously we had received a letter dated August 7, 2018 from Davies Howe dealing with the former proposal, but it called into question the math on some of the parking allotment calculations. And I just want to be clear that those issues have been addressed and that our staff is satisfied that that the numbers we have before us today are currently compliant with our requirements.
Through the chair to Mayor Saunderson, the numbers that we have today, in our view, are compliant with the requirements that are set out in our zoning bylaw. I should point out that we have not treated this restaurant as if it's a separate individual restaurant. Our assumption is with restaurants that are part of hotels, and we've treated every restaurant in town that is part of a hotel like this, that a certain percentage of the people in that restaurant are going to be guests of that hotel, and it is not strictly going to be occupied by people who are from the outside. So that is the way we've treated the restaurant.
And does that calculation extend to the Bear Estate, which I understand has one parking spot for every 4?
Through the mayor, or through the chair to Mayor Saunderson, we've actually treated the Bear Estate, because it is a separate building, it's not part of the actual hotel, we treated it as a separate use, and we have 1 per 4, which is not the rate that you would use if it was part of a hotel. It's a separate building and we've treated it as such.
Okay, if I may, moving to another issue, we heard a great deal before about the environmental buffer and the sensitivity along the waterfront. And I want to know, are there any environmental concerns that arise out of phase 4 of this project?
Through the chair to the mayor, not from phase 4. I would say, and I believe we've said on a number of occasions, that phase 5 is the area that is closer to the environmental areas. Phase 4 is a considerable distance from either the shoreline or any of the environmental areas.
And if I could just take you to one paragraph in the staff report, it's at page 23 through you, Madam Chair, to Nancy, Director Farrar. It says at the last paragraph before conclusion at the bottom, it is noted that the phase 4 building will not encroach into the 45-degree angular plane limit adjacent to a lot line as outlined in the town's urban design manual, sections 7F2C. Can you just explain that to me, please?
I'll certainly try, and what I think I will do is through the chair to the mayor, I think next week we'll bring you a drawing, because it's a lot easier to explain with a drawing. You take the property line, you measure on a 45-degree angle, and that's where your building should be. But what I'll do is I'll be sure by next week that we bring a drawing that shows exactly how that works, because it's a lot easier to explain with a picture than it is in words. Sorry about that, but
So if I can just rephrase it, the setback for the building is equivalent to this 45-degree angle.
Correct.
That's
yes.
How far it must be from the property
yes. So the height of the building is 15 meters, 15 meters this way, 45 degrees angle.
Okay. Thank you very much. Those are my questions.
Yep, next. Yep, Councillor Doherty.
Thank you. I have a couple of comments, actually. My concern primarily at this time, actually, you know what, I'm going to preface it by saying that I also have been an independent business person in this town for a number of years, and I certainly appreciate the value of commerce and employment. On the other hand, we are looking at a project now that from its original inception is 13 years old, has been amended, I think it was said 5 times. We began with a plan that looked at 3 phases, now it is 5 phases. We're being asked today to approve phase 4 without knowing ultimately what phase 5 intends to look like. And I am not suggesting that we need to fix a date for phase 5, but I think we should be looking at this project in its entirety. There have been, I think, legitimate issues, certainly, I won't even say I think, I know there have been legitimate issues raised in regard to the environmental impact of a 5-phase. If we approve 4 phases or phase 4 today, are we tacitly giving approval to phase 5? I think we need to start again on this project. Since this project was brought forward in 2006, we have introduced amendments to our official plan whereby we have added additional protections and higher regard for our natural environment, natural habitat. We have undertaken a community-based strategic plan at which our residents said to us loud and clear that one of their highest priorities is public access to a revitalized waterfront. We have completed a waterfront master plan where again our residents have spoken in very strong terms about the importance of retaining public access to the waterfront. I think for these reasons, we're looking at a proposal today that is not complete, that in effect we're being asked to make a decision in a vacuum. And I'm just not prepared to approve this at this time without seeing what the entire project is intended to look like and then doing the requisite updates on environmental, stormwater management, traffic management, etc. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Perhaps through you to the applicant's representative, Mr. Travis. Mr. Travis, during your presentation this evening, I can't recall the exact word, but if I paraphrase, it was something along the line that imperative or critical. Can you sort of maybe expand upon why at this juncture it's imperative or critical to move forward? I realize I'm putting a bit on the spot, but are there specific reasons that you would give?
Through you, Madam Chair, to Deputy Mayor Keith Hall. It is imperative because there is a time schedule which relates to Mr. Law can speak to his business plan, but it relates to the business plan and the start and investment for this particular phase 4 in order to finish the construction and have productive units in play by X number of 18 months or whatever it is down the road. So from his business plan point of view, it is critical in that sense, Deputy Mayor. It also explains why with phase 5, again, when we go back to the phasing of this, it was intended from day one that it would be multiple phases to respond to the market for the product that Mr. Law is offering. So in a nutshell, the imperative is to try to get this project started as soon as possible so that it can be ready for, let's say, the spring or the summer of 2020. Mr. Law can answer that.
Well, maybe through to you first, if I may. The units themselves, these are units that are for market, to be purchased as a timeshare component, but put back in a pool that are used for rental as part of your hotel management program. So they have a dual function. So I guess what I'm trying to say, when you say they're market driven, the market that's driving is whether or not timeshare purchasers will in fact actually buy these. That's what's driving the market.
Yes, thank you for asking for. And to clarify, with this thing is time is of essence for 2 things. Number 1 is about we need this accommodation for the marketing to sell. Because right now we're coming to the end of the phase 3 and we need to have the phase 4 to come out with what we call is the accommodation. And the accommodation is mainly called the fractional ownership. And the fractional ownership, it means that the people, they will come and stay here for a number of weeks every year like that. So if we running out of product to sell, that means we won't be in business. That means there will be no employment. And number two is that we have arranged the financing from the bank, and they give us the very limited time to do so. If we fail to start off the work, that means we won't have the financing. That is a huge liability I'm facing too, and I pay so much for the commitment fee already. So this time is of essence.
So Mr. Travis can attest, I have some working knowledge of timeshares. But when they're not being used as a timeshare, they're being used as part of your hotel accommodation. And where I'm going with this, and careful in what I say, and that is that I respect the business that you have brought to the community and the resort that you have, the brand that you have created over the years, and the generosity in which you have given back to the community. I'm not here to comment on that. My concern, though, is to Councillor Doherty's maybe comment with regards to the phasing component, and that is that the cart is somewhat ahead of the horse in the sense that we all know to fill those bed bases, those units, when they're not being filled by timeshare residents or guests, you will be using likely, and please correct me if I'm wrong, you'll be using the Bear Estate in whatever capacity, whether it's current size or a modified version, to help drive conferences, which would then fill your bed base. Is that correct?
If I understand you correctly, it's a two things we are talking about. Number one, we are talking about additional inventory or additional accommodation, which we running out of product. So we need to have a new product to sell. And that is strictly for the hotel thing. And we are not relying on the Bear Stay for any additional thing. Whatever it is, that it is. So the plan today is about we're not relying on for the Bear Stay, and we're just talking about the basic hotel use, and just like phase 3, and so this is what we are continuing to do so. And I also take this opportunity to talk about in vacuum. That's not in vacuum. We're talking about vacuum of what? The vacuum of what kind of a question first? What kind of the criteria you're looking for to make you to say it's a vacuum? The project itself has been historically this way. I did not create this kind of system. It was mandated to be in phases. It was this kind of thing, and I just combine to the current rule and regulation. All I need is about something black and white factual today so that I know how to run my business. If anyone try to impose something new to me, let's deal with it later. But so I don't quite understand what you mean by vacuum. Vacuum of what? What kind of criteria? I would appreciate it, particularly what you are talking about. If the people are talking about other issues, like SOS people are talking about, well, I think, Mr. Mayor asked a good question already. Those things have been answered by the Director Nancy. Phase 4 had nothing to do with those issues in here. So what more of a problem at all? I don't get it.
I don't. Sorry, I'm not here to debate you, Mr. Moore.
No, I'm not to you. Yeah.
And again, if I may go back, I understand the timeshare component. And if it was only timeshare, I would say that I don't necessarily have an issue with phase 4 as it relates to the specific issues that have been brought forward tonight, which is really parking. What I am concerned, and quite frankly, you are the only person that can answer this, is that at what point will you be coming back, or a representative from your resort, saying, in order to fill up my bed base, my occupancy during maybe off-peak, or because I've done so much across the resort as a whole, I need to now move forward with the Bear Estate development to enlarge that conference space to fill rooms. And I think that's a valid question, simply because when you look at other resort developments, they certainly look at the square footage that's allocated for conference, amenity space, whether it be salon or spa, restaurant, etc. And they know exactly that, you know, and you do too, that on a per square foot basis, they can derive this amount of income or profit if they've got an occupancy, and that they can derive an occupancy of X percentage to generate that revenue. And I'm sure you've got a few revenue managers here with you tonight that also know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yes, I have.
And that's my point. It is unfortunate that, to Councillor Doherty's comment, and this predates the election, I was not at this table when you were last here, or when representatives were last here, and when there was discussion about the remaining 2 phases. But I think, in fairness to the residents who are here tonight, it would have been nice had this come back to the table in which the way it left prior to the election, where we were looking at the remaining phase of this resort development, so that we could see what the full picture, what the full impact would be going forward. And I do appreciate, as a business person, there are some economic realities, and I hear you loud. I hear you loud and clear when you talk to those economic realities, and I'm simply asking that, had you come back, in fairness to the residents, I apologize. In fairness to those residents who are speaking to the impact that the final 2 phases will have, it would have been nice to have a complete conversation. And I'll leave it.
I guess. I think we'll probably have to do this without a microphone. We'll try to speak up for you. We'll do our best. I'll put my mother's voice in here. All right, so my question through to the director would be, what does a scenario of starting again, probably in Councillor Doherty's words, look like? And what does that expose us to in terms of everybody playing by the rules as they currently are? Can you describe to me what that scenario looks like, please?
And I guess I'm not quite sure what, and I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I might have to ask Councillor Doherty. We can't tear down or undo what's there. I don't think anyone's suggesting that what is there, it's approved, it's built. I don't think it's going anywhere. So I don't think we can't start from scratch and say this is a vacant piece of property with nothing on it. It's not. And so we do have, at this point, we have a plan that has been in place for, there's no question about it, 13 years. It showed a phased development in a number of phases. We've been working away at those phases. So I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I think I'm going to have to ask Councillor Doherty what she means by starting over, because we can't tear down what we've got. We have existing infrastructure, buildings, agreements.
Okay. I think I'll let Councillor Doherty back, but my understanding is that her suggestion was that the reports that are supporting this were too old, and do we need updated reports? And so what does that look like, and how does that expose us in terms of at our current place today with the rules and keeping it equal between all of our development?
Well,
But I'll let Councillor Doherty explain.
Thank you, that's exactly what I meant.
Oh, okay. All right, well, what we do have, Madam Chair, we do have, when they filed for the last applications, I mean, we get an updated traffic, we get updated servicing reports. So we get updated reports when they file for the next phase. We don't go back and say we're going to use the standards that and the reports that were created over a decade ago. We do ask them to file new reports when they come back to us with a new phase.
So we've got, the engineering, for example, we've got an updated traffic, correct me if I'm wrong, I haven't reviewed these in a while, but we've got an updated traffic report, we've got an updated functional servicing report, and we also had some updated environmental work done. Have I missed anything? Stormwater management. Well, sorry, Madam Chair, through you to Councillor Doherty, functional servicing includes sewers, sanitary sewers, storm sewers, water, and all the other servicing. So that would have been part of that report. So I believe we've got, or from what I remember, we have up-to-date functional servicing, traffic, and environmental reports that would reflect kind of standards that we would expect in 2018 as opposed to our standards in 2006.
Thank you. If that helps, thank you. And then Councillor Doyle, do you have any other reports on your list of questions that you wanted to ask that was not included in the list that the director just gave us?
Yes, thank you. And to be clear, based on looking at just one portion of the project tonight, many of the reports are up to date, as the plan has indicated. But if we, and Deputy Mayor Hall put it in a very good way, that back in late last year, we saw a five-phase development. We could see what supporting documents and where to go with them. Today, we're looking at a four-phase development. There were significant issues when we saw 5 phase relative to whether the environmental impact assessment was thorough, whether it needed to be done again in its entirety. We were furnished with a peer review that indicated that perhaps it did require further depth. We also saw a number of questions relative to parking with a 5-phase development. Without seeing what the whole development looks like, we may still be facing all of those issues in the next stage. I think it's important to look at how the project is planned to be ultimately. Again, I understand that the developer certainly can't put a date on when he can commit, but this council and this community need to understand what is being proposed, what is the vision.
All right, thank you for that. And then just on a smaller note, do we have any theories as to where the overflow is coming from if we deem our parking calculations to be accurate? Like what would be creating the spillover into the residential areas, and can we enforce it, how do we enforce it, or are we totally dictated to by the numbers that we have in our current requirements? Thanks.
I'll try. Certainly there's probably, and I don't know if there's a parking problem today. I can't tell you what the source of that parking problem is. I'm sorry, I simply don't know. Other peoples, I'm sure, are much more familiar with the operation of this establishment than I am. If there's parking problems today, and I'm assuming we're hearing that people are parking out on the road, and that's the problem, is that people are parking up and down the roads. I mean, I guess we can start saying that there's no parking on those roads, but that would be by bylaw. But I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I don't know enough about what parking problems they are experiencing today to be able to give you a fair answer. I'm sorry, I just don't know.
All right, so I think we've had lots of conversation on this, so I'm going to ask the members to vote. Do you need me to reread the recommendation? All good with it? All clear? I'll read it anyway. I'm looking dazed. That staff report P 2019-17 be received and council enact and pass an authorization by law to execute an amending site plan control agreement for 9 and 15 Harbour Street East and 300 Balsam Street, Living Waters, Phase 4. All those in favor? All those opposed? Oh, you did vote for? I'm sorry, I did not see. Okay, alright. Alright, so that simply means that we get to get some more updated information from staff for our council meeting. And that this simply goes without a recommendation from the committee at this time, but it certainly still goes to council for the receipt of the further information, and we can consider it at that time. Okay? Alright. Moving on, I'll just do a minute if anybody wants to leave down. Alright, so now, oh, that's better. We will move on to 6.6, PW 2019-07, the 2018 Annual Wastewater Compliance Report, and I'll ask for Director McDonald to introduce Peggy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This evening, Manager Peggy Slama will run through the annual report for the wastewater and provide the committee with an update on our status of our wastewater plant last year and the requirements in terms of our certificate approval and submission dates. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Peggy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll just speak from this location. So the annual wastewater report is a requirement of the certificate of approval for the wastewater treatment plant. The certificate of approval is issued by the Ministry of the Environment, Climate Change and Parks. This report covers the year of 2018, January 1st to December 31st, and this report must be submitted to the Ministry by March 31st, 2019. Flow at the wastewater treatment plant is measured at the raw sewage pumps and through final effluent totalizer at the final effluent weir. For 2018, we've highlighted here what the comparisons are for the average daily flow and the peak flow as compared to design. For 2018, the average flow represented approximately 73% of the design average day flow, and the peak flow represented 78% of the design peak flow. The Ministry, through the Certificate of Approval, also dictates the effluent quality parameters that the plant must meet. The Ministry provides two limits: compliance, which are the limits that the treatment plant must meet, and objective limits, which are best practice standards. For the Collingwood plant, these include the carbonaceous biological oxygen demand, or CBOD, total suspended solids, total phosphorus, and pH. And for 2018, the wastewater treatment plant met all of the effluent objective and compliance limits for these parameters. For the parameters specifically of CBOD, TSS, and total phosphorus. There was one non-compliance of the effluent criteria in 2018. The objective and compliance limit was not met for E. coli in November 2018. This non-compliance was a direct result of the UV equipment not operating properly. This equipment is aged and has been unreliable in 2018 for us. The town is currently in the process of replacing this equipment. And we hope to have our new equipment online within the next month. When the non-compliance result was determined, the final effluent was dosed with chlorine to meet criteria, and the ministry was notified as per regulated protocol. Final effluent testing is completed in-house and by third-party laboratory. And the same with raw water, with the raw wastewater, this testing is completed by a third-party laboratory. And the number of the tests completed for the wastewater treatment plant exceed the minimum required. And that is a brief summary of the report for the water plant, or the wastewater plant of 2018. If there are any questions.
Thank you very much, Manager Slama. Is there anyone in the public wishing to speak to this report? Okay, seeing none. Our recommendation is that the Development Operations Services Standing Committee receive and refer the following recommendation to the next meeting of Council, that staff report PW 2019-07 be received and Council approve the 2018 Annual Wastewater Compliance Report. A mover and a seconder, Mayor Saunderson, Deputy Mayor Hull. Any questions or comments?
Sure, thank you, Madam Chair, through you, Peggy and Brian and your whole department. Congratulations, great outcome. I think we dealt with that non-compliance last term when we discussed it, and so my understanding is the bulb's been replaced and we've got the new equipment on order, is that right?
Yes, through the chair, we are currently in the process of installing the new equipment, and it will be much more reliable and produce a high quality effluent for us, as well as greatly reducing our energy consumption.
Good news. That was my question, thank you.
Yep, thank you. Any other comments? Right, seeing none, sorry.
I don't get my hand up quick enough. You test the effluent on a daily basis, so this one incident of non-compliance would have been picked up then very quickly, is that
Through the chair to Councillor Doherty, I believe that the testing of E. coli is a weekly test, so that's why it takes a bit of time for them when they do the in-house testing to see the result. As soon as they see the result is not meeting the criteria parameters, then they start dosing with chlorine and notify the ministry. The E. coli is also geodetic mean, or I believe, or I think I have it in the report, but there is, it's not one result that becomes our reporting number. So there is some ability to average through a few numbers.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so no other questions? All those in favor? That is carried unanimously. And then next up, we have PW 2019-08, which is the Clearview Wastewater Management Agreement. Director McDonald?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will again turn this one over to Manager Slama. She has worked with this agreement with our neighbors and is quite familiar with it, and I'll have her briefly run through the parameters of the agreement with you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the town has provided wastewater operation services to the township of Clearview since 2003. The previous contract expired December 31st, 2018. The town of Collingwood and the township of Clearview have been reviewing a new contract since November 2018. Both parties are happy with the service relationship, and as we looked forward to the agreement expiring, neither party was considering ending the agreement. The proposed agreement in front of you follows a cost-plus basis for fees. Labor and material expenses are allocated to a dedicated GL and billed on a monthly basis with approximately a 1 or 2 month lag. Cost estimates included in Schedule C are annual estimates based on actual costs from previous years and existing third-party service agreements. Labor rate included in Schedule D is based on actual plus burden. Also with this agreement, we included some new clauses. There is the section on performance of service, and this was brought forward by the town of Collingwood for consideration. There's a section on future wastewater facilities, which the township of Clearview brought forward to cover any potential future facilities that may come into operation during the 4-year term of this proposed agreement. And also you might note in section C, I believe, or in Schedule C, that we negotiated an increase in the administrative fees to better cover management timing that is expended on this contract occasionally. The agreement was drafted by the Town of Collingwood lawyers, and the agreement has also been reviewed by our insurance provider, and there was no comments or changes. The recommended term of the agreement matches the council term, so that a new council may have an opportunity to review and provide comment. And with this report, staff is recommending the town enter into the service agreement with the Township of Clearview.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone from the public or the gallery wishing to speak to this agenda item? Seeing none, the recommendation is that the Development Operations Services Standing Committee receive and refer the following recommendation to the next meeting of council: that staff report PW 2019-08 be received and council enact and pass a bylaw to authorize the execution of the Clearview Wastewater Management Agreement. A mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Doherty, Deputy Mayor Hall. Any comments, questions?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, through you to Peggy. So the facilities that we would be operating pursuant to this contract are owned by Clearview, and some of them have yet to be built, I think.
Yes, through the chair to Mayor Saunderson. The facilities covered under this contract are already constructed, so they include the Creemore sewage treatment plant, the Stainer sewage treatment plant, and 2 Stainer pump stations, one which is operating and one which is not used yet. And just the section covering future facilities, the Township of Clearview has on their radar in the future that they might want to construct and commission a pump station in Creemore. And so they just wanted to have some provision for the operation of that pump station in this agreement in case it does come to fruition during the term of this agreement. And you'll see that section just notes that there would be discussions about how services would be increased if that facility was commissioned during the term.
Okay, and during that time, sorry, Madam Chair, through you, we would be the operating authority. So I guess my questions, and this goes back to our drinking water training, where there was an operating authority that was having issues with the owner about having capital expenditures and upgrades done. So are we covered as the operating authority in this agreement should Clearview refuse or delay doing something that we recommended to them to do to update their facilities?
Through the chair, so I think the new section on performance of service provides some what's the word I'm looking for? Security with respect to that. It notes that if Clearview is negligent in moving forward with certain aspects, then we can do work that needs to be done to meet requirements, and but it is their responsibility ultimately to pay for it.
And is there an ability on our part, if they're refusing to undertake significant capital expenditures, that we can terminate the agreement? Do we have that ability, or are we on the hook to do the repairs should they refuse?
Through the chair, there is the ability for us to terminate the agreement.
Okay.
Yeah.
Those are my questions, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Next up are reports and minutes of other committees and boards. We have the Collingwood Heritage Committee minutes. Before the committee approves them, do we have anybody here who wishes to comment? Margaret?
I'll be quick. We've got a long day. Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. I'm responding to my deputation in the Heritage meeting minutes. And my deputation to the Heritage Committee was basically an update on support programs that are offered by Collingwood for designated heritage properties, but I spoke more specifically to the Heritage Property Tax Relief Program. When I was previously a member of the committee, that dates back, I guess, 2009, I took on the task of doing some research of support programs that are offered throughout Ontario for heritage properties. And after the information was compiled and I talked to staff, we were basically very pleased that the council at the time were in support and passed the bylaw in 2010 supporting a 10% rebate of the heritage property tax rebate. This percentage was matched automatically by the province for the education portion, and later on it was matched by the county as well. And I believe if municipality sets the percentage, now the province will automatically follow that percentage and the county as well. It's important to note that the amount of the support offered by the county plus the province exceeds what the municipality rebates. It is also an equitable program in which those who pay higher taxes get a bigger rebate. The PowerPoint presentation that I did was updated with new data. I went to the province to make sure what new things had been added, went to the county to make sure all the data in the charts that I presented was accurate, and then consulted with the municipality and the building department as to what the finances were at this level. I also included comparison charts that illustrate where Collingwood is placed on the continuum with other municipalities in Ontario, and then another chart to show where we're on the continuum in Simcoe County. We presently offer the lowest amount of the program at 10%, where others in the program rebate up to the max of 40%. And my deputation explains how the program is funded. It explains increasing participation, eligibility, maintenance agreements, and the objectives of the program. And it is ACO's recommendation to the Heritage Committee, because ultimately it will be the Heritage Committee making recommendations to Council, to renew the Heritage Tax Relief Bylaw with an increase to a 20% rebate. There are a lot more, and you can get a better picture by looking at the charts that are created, and I can forward that information by email because it's easier to look at it and then decide. But thank you for listening. I just wanted to bring it to your attention. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And you are correct as the procedure. It will come to us through Heritage if they deem it, yes. Okay, the motion is that the Development and Operations Services Standing Committee receive and refer the Collingwood Heritage Committee minutes of February 2019 to the next meeting of Council. Mover and a seconder, Councillor Doherty, Deputy Mayor Hall. Any further comments? Respect the minutes. All those in favor? Oh, sorry, Deputy Mayor.
Through you to the director, if we could request from staff to have that presentation that went to Heritage, that would be appreciated.
Right.
And then the other, I don't expect to have the answer off the cuff. It jumped off the page because of the address. There was an issue regarding a door, 125 Napier. That's the old Connaught building.
Correct.
And I was surprised, that's only been renovated in the last couple of years. Well, not a couple, but the last decade. What's the issue?
Through Madam Chair to Councillor Hall, the issue from what I understand is that there seems to be of the view that they used interior doors as opposed to exterior doors, and they're not keeping the winter out, and so they want to replace the doors with sturdier doors. And because it's a heritage building, there were certain types of doors that they need to use when they're replacing the doors.
So was this, through you, Chair, was this deputation by this couple on behalf of the 4 units or just their particular unit? Is this a conduit?
Madam Chair, it would be really the 2 condos that are in the old part of the building.
Okay.
The back.
Facing, maybe. Okay, I'm just curious.
All right, good. All right, so all those in favor? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Are there any other departmental updates or discussion? Yep. Director McDonald?
We have two updates for you this evening. I just want to make the committee aware and the public aware that we will be having a public information center on our master servicing. That's our sewer and water servicing study that's been carried out over the last year and a half, and that will be on March 27th on the third floor of the library between 4 and 7. And Manager Slama had a quick update with respect to numbers on the transmittal program that we have going forward.
Yes, through the chair, I just wanted to let the committee know, the committee is aware of our transmitter mass deployment project, which we have underway. The third-party service provider we need about 9,000 transmitters installed, and they've completed installation on approximately 5,200. So we have just under 4,000 left. The contractor has also started issuing communications with residents where we need to change a water meter, where the old water meter is not compatible with the transmitter technology. So residents will be maybe receiving notices that asking them to schedule an appointment to have a meter change out. And right now we are on schedule for this project to be complete at the end of April.
Oh, great. Good news, thank you. All right, not seeing any other updates. Any public delegations, 5 minutes, that wish to come forward and speak?
Me?
Yeah, said that if you've got your hand up, come on up.
Well,
welcome, Irene.
I have to say, I haven't said anything yet, but I'm exhausted. Okay, this is about.
Sorry,
I'm
Irene.
an advocate.
Irene, we need you to use the mic because we're live streaming.
But I don't need to.
We need to for the recording.
You can't hear me?
I can hear you, but we need it for the tape. Thank you.
Anyway, I'm an advocate for a traffic signal on Highway 26 East, okay, between Pilkington Glass and the Pretty River Parkway. Based on research, the volume of traffic coming off that roundabout, and now the speed of traffic, like at 75 clicks an hour, that I will say the OPP are doing not a bad job. I drove, I was at Ellenvale today in a grade 2 class, and I was driving through Wasaga Beach and I thought, boy, how wonderfully controlled their traffic is with their traffic systems and their traffic lights. And I came up Beechwood Road, as I always do, because I do not use this realignment or the roundabout. And what I suddenly realized, there's more traffic on Beechwood Road than there is anywhere else. Anyway, as I proceeded further, stopped, made the right-hand turn to come into town. Ah, there's an OPP, has somebody stopped. Now I see this on a regular basis because I drive through Wasaga Beach a lot and I go there. But anyway, listen, I just want to tell you about this letter. Oh, you all have a copy of this letter, I suspect, that I wrote to Mrs. Leonard. And this was in relation to a conversation I had to her last August 30, and at her suggestion, she said I should write a letter asking for this traffic signal to be given a priority in the town of Collingwood's 2019 budget. Well, I got the list of what was in the paper. There's nothing here. And you know, this light would cost approximately $230,000, not $2,030,000. So keep that in mind. Anyway, I gave the reasons. School bus turning. I don't want to see that school bus stopping on the highway and children having to walk across 3.5 lanes of traffic to get to their home. And of course, the town bus turns, and this, I'm talking about Elliott Street. This is the most strategic point that it should be at. The town bus turns there every 20 minutes on the hour. I don't know how this guy keeps his, or these ladies or men who drive these buses keep their timeline. I have no idea with this influx of traffic. Helps employees, customers to get in and out of Hyundai on the southwest side of the highway. All the residents, the motorists making left-hand turns to their homes Blue Shores included, as well as Toyota, the Brick, Honda, Esso, all the other entrances, Elephant Thoughts, and all the streets, Eva, St. Clair, Robert, Elliott, and Blue Shores as well, included, because I'll tell you, they must tear their hair out trying to make a left-hand turn at their first entrance. So I know left-hand turns are important, and they've helped. They do help. However, this is what has happened since. They put a sign in the front of the brick that says, right-hand lane exits, with a green arrow. So guess what? All the traffic is coming up the highway in the curb lane, because now they've seen the sign. So guess what? You're not turning right or left. It's not happening. Because you just have to wait until all that traffic clears, because you would not dare pull out in front of that traffic that's coming up the highway, because it's not 50 kilometers an hour. But some things have changed, okay? But there is still traffic chaos. I talked with the parents of the children on that school bus, and I said to him, you need to go to the Simcoe Muskoka Catholic School Board, and you need to tell that bus now to turn at St. Clair. You got to come down around St. Clair on the curve and drop those children off in front of their home, which is now being done. So that's a good thing. However, this, as I talked about, this sign has created another problem. And I'd like to just tell you right now, there was an accident at that Esso station, which should never have been built there, but it's there. There was an accident there in Robert Street, and that lady succumbed to her injuries. An SUV came out and ran right into her, making a left-hand turn on her driver's side. Okay, and you know what? This is another issue. These entrances and exits on residential streets, what's so disconcerting about this is these people who are coming under there think they have the right of way. No, they don't. The residents have the right of way on residential streets. So we either need a stop sign on Robert and St. Clair coming out of the Esso, or we need a yield sign. I spoke with the powers to be. They said, no, we're not doing that. Well, I think it needs to be done. Okay, so I spoke to one of the councillors, and I spoke to a couple of them actually, maybe the mayor I might have spoken to. But anyway, one councillor went to the engineering department, and she talked about this whole situation. Well, we don't need a light there because there's not enough north-south flow of traffic. I'm like, what? I walked 4 houses down and I'm in Georgian Bay. There's 51 houses in the area that I live. There's 300 houses or so in Blue Shores, and they're at Browns Marina. They hop in their boat and they're in Georgian Bay. What kind of north-south traffic? So I thought, okay, I have to do some research here. So I went west of Collingwood on Highway 26, haven't been up that road for 20 years. And what did I find? A light at Canadian Tire, a light at Cranberry, and a light at Lighthouse Point on a 2-lane highway with a left-hand turn lane with a light for those people to get in and out of their condos.
Irene?
But there's nothing south, there's no road south.
I've just given you your 30-second warning, so if you got something really important, get it in.
Well, listen, I'm just going to say this about that, okay? About what I've said. There needs to be a light there. In the best interest of all the people, everybody, not just me. It's not about me. It's all the people coming up and down that highway, all the people who live there, all the businesses involved, and I'll be back in touch in 60 days. I have spoken to Jeff Urick, Transportation Minister for the Province of Ontario. He tells me that Collingwood's jurisdiction is from the Pilkington Glass Plant on through town, wherever, okay? And it has nothing to do with provincial government. And I don't know who MTO is, but they need to understand what's going on here. This is a very, very serious issue. And it needs to be dealt with sooner than later. And I may just be going to the media. I might go to CTV, I might go to CBC, I might even go to the Premier of Ontario. Because this needs to be dealt, and I'm very serious about this. I also don't want to see wild animals that are crossing the highway get killed either. There also needs to be a light so people can cross to the south and come from the south to the north. Okay, and it's two things that are really important, I think. They're kind of interesting. St. Clair Street is not a trail, so the sign needs to come down off the pole in front of 15 St. Clair Street. A trail. No, it's not. It's a residential street. And two, Honda are test driving their cars on St. Clair Street because they can't safely get out on the highway.
Okay.
It really is that. Can they be doing that? No, I don't think so.
All right, we've heard you loud and clear, and we appreciate you taking the time to
listen,
come.
you know what? I can talk for 5 minutes and someone else can talk for 20. Please.
No, I think you were very succinct and you got your points across.
That's okay. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to give a deputation? All right, is there any other business from the committee members? Okay, seeing none, on motion by, who would like to adjourn? Nobody wants to adjourn, we're here all night. Councillor Doherty, we're adjourned. Thank you very much to everyone who participated tonight from the public and by way of our electronic transmissions. Thank you.